welcome to the Practical People Manager podcast, designed to support line managers with practical tools, insights and ideas to help them lead and support their teams well. I'm your host Anna, and today I'm joined by Yohan Macdonald, the founder of Great Minds Training. Yohan works with organisations to help leaders better understand mental health, well-being and inclusion in the workplace. Through training and awareness programmes, he supports organisations to create healthier, more supportive working environments. In this episode, we explore why silence and stigma can still get in the way of people getting and asking help, and why line managers have such an important role in supporting changes, starting those conversations early and supporting people with confidence. So let's get into part one with Yohan. So Yohan, thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Yeah, really looking forward to this session.
Great. So it'd be really good for the listeners to know a little bit more about you. So can you take us through your journey and how you've come up to being with us today?
Yeah, good question. It's when I was actually thinking back to my journey maybe a few years ago. I probably would have given a different story. I would probably said it started 10 years ago, but actually when I reflect on that, I think it started probably 25 years ago. And it started actually when I was in school. And I didn't realise at the time, but a lot of the things that were happening in school shaped me today. And so it shaped my work, it shaped the jobs I had and the experiences I had there. And then that's what led me into creating Great Minds. But just at the beginning I didn't have a bad time at school, but I don't think I excelled. I struggled with sort of confidence and self-esteem. And that for me was the foundations for anxiety and depression, which developed in my early 20s. Right. And I struggled with that. And one of the things I didn't do was talk about it, just kept it to myself, didn't share it with anyone. And that made it worse, made it last much longer. And I stumbled through it. I managed to eventually get to the other side, but it lasted for years, but about 10 years in total.
Right.
And as I went into employment and the workplace, the signs were still there. I struggled with actually in my early career. I used to have panic attacks on the way to clients and really struggled. Wow. And actually, I used to be sick and struggle, but I didn't talk about it. And that's what once again made it last longer. But I eventually kind of left that behind me, and got into my career, and that developed, and that went reasonably well. I got promoted into a manager role, and I managed a team, which went really well. One thing, when I look back now on that, what I didn't do was there was never any personal touch to it. I think I was probably one of those accidental managers where I got moved up into manager role, but without any people training. Which
is very common these days.
Very common. Yeah. And that caused me a whole host of issues, and I didn't really know how to navigate that. I was good operationally, but the people side of it, quite weak. But I took that experience, and when I got to a point where I actually got made redundant, which was for me the perfect opportunity, because before then I realized I wasn't living my purpose. I wasn't doing really what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And actually took the opportunity to volunteer at my local mind. And the local minds are charities. They serve a local community, running with different projects. And I was just helping people out in the social club, getting to know people, having conversations. And I realized that was part of my purpose. I realized I wanted to do something around people. Mm-hmm. I didn't know what it was, but then the opportunity for a outreach worker and trainer came up, and I grabbed it with both hands. I didn't think I'd get it, but I did. And I worked with the most amazing lady, Pauline, my boss at Mind, and she took me under her wing and showed me the ropes and showed me how it's done. And that's where I kind of fell in love with the kind of workplace wellbeing.
Yeah.
And they had a team. Well, I say a team, it was me and her. So it was a very small team. She had incredible knowledge and experience of mental health and how that works and how to support people. But I would say, generally speaking, her and the organisation didn't really know how to run it as a commercial enterprise. So to create money from it.
Yeah.
And because of my background, the companies I worked for, which were, Fortune 500 companies, huge companies, global, and absolutely know how to make money and run a business, I kind of brought that experience, plus the experience of managing a team, plus my lived experience. And that's where I kind of grew into the whole workplace wellbeing space. And a few years into that's when I created Great Minds, because I thought, actually, I've got so much knowledge and experience that it seems that's valuable for others. Yeah. And that's where I really kind of went out on my own and created my own stuff. And that's what's brought me here today. I've been doing that. Great Minds has been running in the background alongside the training. I deliver training as well for the biggest mental health training companies in the UK, MHF England and Mind, and others. But I also run Great Minds as well, and that's kind of what's brought me to where I am today, really.
It's amazing you say, in the early part of your career, you struggled with your own mental health, but it seems to be the real focus. Like, I don't remember years ago us talking about mental health and, how people were suffering or coping. What do you think has highlighted that? I mean, COVID comes to mind. That seems to be one area where mental health was on everybody's agenda. But do you think that's the only time it's kind of come to the surface, or do you think has it supported it in some way?
It's interesting because I get that question a lot when I'm delivering training. But actually, what people don't really realise is before the pandemic, I think it was the World Health Organization stated that mental health issues is at epidemic levels in the UK.
Yeah.
And because of that, there was problems way before, and that's why I got into this.
Right.
And certainly the pandemic compounded that. It certainly made it worse. I mean, there's a huge amount of evidence that pandemics, the legacy of that is mental health issues with all of them. Ebola, SARS, there's clear evidence of that.
Right.
So it's no surprise then that mental health issues increased following the pandemic. But it's a risk factor, and it was a cause for many people, but actually there was a foundation of issues there before.
Yeah.
And there still continues to be, and it's just another factor which people need to try and address to try and maintain a healthy life.
Yeah. And what do you think the biggest challenge is then with mental health? People talk about it an awful lot, and I know there's various forms of mental health and how it impacts people, but what do you see as being the biggest challenge?
The biggest challenge in the workplace or for individuals?
I suppose both, really.
So the biggest challenge in the workplace is, that mental health issues are prevalent.
Yeah.
The statistics show that 1 in 6 on average in the workplace will have a diagnosable problem, probably on the lines of anxiety, depression, burnout. They're very common, and that can come from the demands of work. It could be the kind of always on culture, which is expected in a kind of hybrid environment. But you've also, and actually the last one actually may be surprising, but it's the silence, which is for me one of the biggest problems. And the silence is that stigma.
Yeah.
It's the barrier. It's the thing that stops people talking about it, stop people being open and reaching out for support. And I was one of those people.
Yeah.
So I know what that feels like deeply, and I hear it every day. And I, 10 years later, I wish that had changed. But actually, even this week, I've delivered training sessions, and I asked them, so what do you think gets in the way? How would you feel? Do you think people are open to talking about their mental health? And the answer still is, well, no, there's still concerns about how people are going to perceive them.
Yeah.
Are they going to be treated differently? Is their job at risk? And these are all real fears that people have. And that, sadly, I think that silence is one of the biggest challenges, obviously for the organisation, but also the question you asked for the individuals, because it's the self-stigma, which means it stops people reaching out. It stops people saying, hey, I'm struggling, I need some help, and asking for that without fear of, once again, negative consequences. And until we kind of get past that, until it's on parity with at least sort of physical health, people tend to be more open about physical health. But until we're there, then there's a lot of work to do.
Yeah. And it's sad, isn't it, that stigma, I think. I agree. I think when I've had struggles with my mental health, which are ongoing, if I'm honest, I don't say anything to anybody. You hold it in because you're right. You don't want anyone to know or to think, you're weak or you can't handle stuff. So it's a real shame that actually that's still a major part of the issue when it comes to challenges. So let's think about it from a line manager point of view. I think from my experience, being a HR professional, there's a couple of things that come to mind, really. You talk about stigma, you talk about, that it's really prevalent, and people don't really talk about it as much as they should. As a line manager, what do you think kind of the key kind of signals are to kind of recognise that maybe a member of their team is struggling with their mental health?
Well, there's lots of things to look for. it's what you're looking for. The key things are there's a shift in where they were to where they are today.
Okay.
So there's a change. But I would actually take a step back from that question, because a lot of it's not, it's about spotting those signs, and we'll come into those in a second, but it's the bit before. It's about getting to know that person. In other words, I call it forming a baseline, a kind of baseline of what is their normal, what are their normal day to day. And so getting to know them on a, professional, personal level, but working relationship. So how do they normally behave? What's their normal tone? How do they normally go about the day to day? And when you notice a change in that, and either they dip down or maybe they change in some other way, become more aggressive or outward, then that is a signal that maybe something's changed, and that's just a signal to start a conversation. So the things to look for are social changes. So are they behaving differently around people? Are their relationships changing? Are their relationships changing with their line manager? And so that's the signal. Their habits, have they started turning up late? Are they missing the start of meetings? Are they not turning up at all? Maybe their camera's not on anymore. They used to turn it on. So the habits can be once again another indicator. And the obvious one, performance. Are they dipping? Are they missing their deadlines? Are they not maybe delivering a quality of work that they used to delivering? And I mean, these are kind of easier to measure because they're more, it probably links more to KPIs. So there's things that you can look for. And what else? Fatigue. Someone can just look tired. Because unfortunately, mental health issues typically tend to affect your sleep. So you might see it physically on their face, but also they may just take less effort in presenting themselves. So they're not getting a hair done, nails done, not having a shave, not wearing a sharp suit. And that could be a sign. Or the opposite, actually, they can be wearing a sharper suit, or they're suddenly looking, whoa, they don't normally look like that. And there's a shift, and it's like, I wonder why they shift. That's why I think it's a good way to think, just being curious. And last one, I guess temperament. They're showing more anger, perhaps, or emotion, really strong emotion. So, and unfortunately, surprisingly, mental health issues can cause people to feel angry because they're maybe angry that they're not coping, and they can take it out. So what you might see is aggression, verbally, physically, or punching walls, or shutting laptops down, slamming them. And once again, if this is a change from their norm, then that is a signal. And it's about trying to start that conversation early, just however you do it, but just really trying to engage with them. And that early intervention is going to be key.
I love what you say there about knowing your people. I think that's so important. With some of my roles, you really try and encourage your managers to know who your people are, because you're right, they're the ones that are going to recognise things that aren't in the norm, really. And I always just say, even if you say, hey, how you doing today? That's like a really good start of a conversation. But with line managers, they're so uncomfortable about having those conversations. I think there's a real fear of saying the wrong thing, or what if I upset you? I mean, how would you recommend a manager starts that conversation if they've got a few concerns, or they see some of those signs that maybe, a member of their team isn't, acting as normal or showing some of the signs that you've mentioned?
And all those things I hear every day in training sessions. And that is one of the barriers. There's concerns about saying the wrong thing, like there's a right thing. Like I could email them a sort of template of say this, and everything's going to work out. The right thing is getting to know your team, like you said, and actually engaging with them on a level that they feel comfortable. So in other words, if you know your team member, that's why I think encouraging to do courses like insights models or social style. So if they're a direct person, if they're red, that's how you need to approach them. If they're more blue, you need to be more, kind of factual and give them some evidence, and the greens and the yellows. And it's just, you need to tailor that approach to them, and just not be concerned that, you're going to say the wrong thing. The wrong thing to say is the thing you don't say. So in other words, the silence is the wrong thing. And it's better to be imperfect and maybe stumble over your words. But I think when it comes from the heart, when it's genuine, that will show up. So how do you do it? Well, I created something called the Safe Conversation Framework for exactly that. Because I was one of those people who's like, well, I don't know, how do you start that conversation? I work well with frameworks and structure. So it's so the S stands for setting it up.
Yeah.
Set it up in the right way, and that's the most important, because actually this is where I think a lot of managers make a mistake. They just dive in if they do start that conversation and without any preparation.
Yeah.
So not thinking about, well, how are you going to approach them?
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to say? Where are you going to approach them?
Yeah.
And is it virtual? Mm-hmm. So do you send them a Teams invite? What do you call it? Is it
Teams invite? How awful.
Exactly. Or do you do it on Slack or other platforms?
Yeah.
Is it less formal? Do you call them on WhatsApp? Or do you wait for them to attend a team meeting? Do you say, look, can you stay there at the end?
Yeah.
All this can help with that preparation.
Okay.
And also think about, what do you want to say?
Yeah.
What are you concerned about? What have you noticed?
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to say that. But you need to get that preparation right, and maybe also bring in, if you are concerned, bring in some resources. Maybe the number for the employee assistance program or other resources if you have them, Bupa. And so that's the setup. That A is about asking open questions. Mm-hmm. So it's just asking lots and lots of questions where you get them to do more of the talking. So you want them to be doing probably 70% of the conversation.
Yeah.
And but not just, every manager I'm sure knows what good open questions are, but it's also relative questions. So, and this is kind of feeds back into my previous point around getting to know them.
Yeah.
So of course you can say, how are you doing? How are you feeling? How's things going at the moment? But if you know them personally, you might say, well, how is your mum? How is she doing after her fall? Or how is your daughter? I know she was struggling with settling into school and she was anxious. Or, you've got a house move, which is really bogging you down.
Yeah.
And that way, it's just a really great opener.
Yeah, good way of connecting, isn't it?
Good way of connecting.
You're showing that you're listening and you've taken, like you said, you're engaged with that individual. Yeah, good way to get them settled.
100%. And then the listening part, which is the F, which is focus on listening, is the most important skill.
Right.
Because listening, obviously, yes, you're trying to understand how they're feeling, but what I'm trying to share is that most of that communication that tells you how they're feeling isn't going to be coming from their words.
Yeah.
It's going to come through body language and tone.
Yeah.
And that's sort of 93% of it.
Right.
So words are important. Really pay attention to that, but observe how they respond.
Yeah.
It's a bit like I compare it to a poker player.
Oh, right.
So if you're playing poker with somebody, great poker players, and I wish I was one, but I'm not, are really great at reading the other person. So they're looking for tells to see what they've got in their hand.
Yeah.
And what I didn't realize is actually that they start that conversation before the game starts. So they're having a conversation just to get a kind of baseline assessment.
Yeah.
And on how you typically respond. When you're being truthful, what do they notice?
Yeah.
So when you're not being truthful, or when you're not sharing the whole truth, they can notice a change in you.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the kind of mindset around a people manager can be is, what are they, so if you know what their baseline, what their normal is, you can notice the changes.
Yeah.
And the last point is the E, which is about empathy. And empathy is combined with the listening skills is, once again, so important part of a toolkit of a leader, that it's about understanding how they're feeling.
Yeah.
How long they're feeling that way, how it's impacting them, putting yourself in their shoes.
Yeah.
Taking off your manager hat and trying to position yourself. If you were them, how might it feel?
Yeah.
So you're connecting with your own similar emotions, which is there's a level of vulnerability there in regards to that. And so it can be difficult and challenging, but that's the only way you get that connection.
Yeah.
And I think that's using something like the safe conversation framework really is helpful.
Sounds great. It's a really good framework, like you said, and you can take yourself through each step, can't you, really? I think also there's a bit of preparation, isn't there, around that conversation. So as much as you don't want it to be scripted, I think having that conversation and having that framework to follow would probably give managers a bit more courage, I think, to have those conversations.
It's what I would have wanted.
Yeah.
And actually, when I think about it from my perspective, I'm thinking, if I took myself back, back to the sort of corporate days, what would I have needed? And I think just, if you'd have said, well, you just need to go in and have a conversation, ask how they are, like, well, that's scary. Like, where do I start? And I talk myself out of it.
Yeah.
And that's typically what I hear.
Yeah.
Because managers want to help. They really do, but they just don't know how.
Yeah.
And I think giving them the tool to make things as easy as possible, then they're more likely to do it.
Yeah. It's interesting to see about managers wanting to help. I know in my experience, I don't know, back in the 80s, 90s, probably showing my age now, everything was a back problem. People were signed off because they had a bad back. And now I think some of the managers are quite sceptical of, well, now they're being signed off because it's mental health. You know, is it real? I mean, ultimately, what would you say to those managers and around, you know, kind of saying, well, we don't believe mental health is a real thing and people are just utilising it, you know, to kind of, I don't know, get out of doing stuff or to sign themselves off sick? I mean, what would you say to those managers?
Once again, another prominent point which comes up pretty frequently. And funnily enough, well, I don't even know if it is funny, but just last week, I actually had a leader, quite senior director, who actually said to me that, and these are the words he used, that mental health is now the new bad back.
Yeah,
in
that's
our
what
company.
people say, don't they? Yeah,
and that's so. What I would say to that is, firstly, is there a possibility that people can use it as an excuse to call in sick and or take time off or whatever it is that they're doing? Yes, it does happen.
Yeah.
But the problem is actually more than just them using that as an excuse. The problem is that you've got someone who's disengaged.
Yeah.
Someone doesn't want to
Yeah,
be there
very
for whatever reason. So you've
Yeah.
got much bigger problems than that. They'll find another reason. They'll find a reason to not show up, not engage and get stuff done. The much bigger problem is the ones who are silent, who do need help, who don't say a word.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think the statistic I came across recently is 2 in 5 employees in the workplace would share. So, but most wouldn't.
Oh, wow.
So only 40%.
Yeah.
So that means there's a huge amount of people. And also, if they do share, well, how much are they sharing?
Yeah.
That's the thing. And are they sharing enough to get the help and support they need?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the numbers speak for themselves.
Yeah.
That's not happening.
Yeah.
And so, yes, of course, that is a concern, but the concern should be far more around how do you get those who are silent to be open. Incidentally, the company that I just referred to, they actually have I'm actually involved in some ongoing support with them because there's a huge gap between the workforce and the leaders and even HR.
Okay.
And even mental health first aiders. They kind of see them as a them and us.
Oh, right.
And they see all those on that side as the them.
Yeah.
And there's a huge gap in between. And unfortunately, there's a lot more issues that are coming out as a result of it. So it kind of feeds into the fact that it's not just a individual problem, it's a cultural problem.
Yeah.
And that's where I think a lot of work needs to be done.
Yeah, absolutely. You talked before about performance management, and I think, you know, you're right. I suppose if you're performing, not meeting the expectations, that can also bring on mental health. How can a manager support that then? Because you're trying to manage their performance because they're not meeting expectations, but they're either suffering mental health already or actually it brings on that. And I think some managers sometimes see it as, oh, here we go, you know, now you've got mental health issues, but ultimately there is a performance issue. Where's that balance then of supporting their mental health, but also supporting them to perform better?
I think one of the issues is that a lot of managers will see mental health and wellbeing as a HR issue.
Yeah.
But actually, I see it as a leadership skill.
Yeah.
And this idea that you can separate kind of mental health and performance and kind of look at them independently, they're interdependent.
Yeah.
They actually relate and directly affect each other.
Yeah.
They are separate, but you need to be mindful that if you're looking at performance, you need to ask yourself the question, is there mental health a reason why they're not performing?
Yeah.
And if that's the case, looking at just the performance is futile because you're not actually getting to the root cause of the problem. So in other words, if you put them on a PIP, then that you're addressing the symptoms.
Yeah.
You're not addressing the cause of it. So you need to dive deep and understand, okay, well, what is the problem?
Yeah.
How is it impacting you and your work? How long have you had this issue? You know, where is it an issue in your life? And having that open conversation. And then in order to address the problem, you may have to implement things like reasonable adjustments to ensure that the person is, you know, working to the best of their ability.
Yeah.
And that work can actually be part of their recovery. So it's not necessarily right, you go off and you recover and you come back when you're well.
Yeah.
Part of that recovery could be that they still work, but maybe there's adjustments made to the volume or the type of work they do,
Right.
the hours they do, or maybe the commute. It could be, it's going to be based on what the problems are.
Yeah.
But that's the conversation that needs to take place.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, if that's not recognised as being part of the course, then there could be a liability there, because there's actually a legal responsibility. If someone has a mental health issue under the Equality Act, it's seen as a disability. So a workplace has to be seen, and the organisation has an overall responsibility, but the line manager also has a responsibility, and they could be liable.
Yeah.
So they need to ensure that they're adhering to the Equality Act, putting things in place.
Yeah.
And depending on what the adjustment is, it may or may not result in speaking to HR.
Yeah.
But it ultimately, don't be fearful of doing that.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't be the first step.
Yeah.
I think a lot of managers literally don't put their hands up and say, well, I don't know how to deal with this. Let me go and speak to HR. And I'm not saying that's wrong, but there's a lot they can do before that. And actually they can play a huge part. Ultimately, if that person does need help and support, it's going to come back to the line manager anyway.
Yeah.
So they are going to be part of it.
That brings us to the end of part 1 of my conversation with Yohan. In part 2, we'll continue the conversation and what organisations can do to move from a reactive approach to a more proactive mental health and wellbeing culture. A huge thank you to Yohan for joining me for the 3-part conversation. I'll include Yohan's details and the resources mentioned in the show notes. You'll also find my details too, including how to connect with me on LinkedIn, TikTok and Instagram, as well as finding out more about my work through The People Expert. Thank you for listening to The Practical People Manager. If you found the episode useful, please like, follow or subscribe, and please share with other line managers, HR colleagues or business leaders who may find it useful. And remember, being a people manager is not about having all the answers. It's about being willing to listen, learn and support the people around you. Thank you for listening to the Practical People Manager podcast. I'm Anna, your people partner. I'll add my details to the show notes. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, follow and subscribe. It really helps the podcast reach more line managers who want to lead their teams well. And remember, being a great people manager isn't about having all the answers. It's about being willing to listen, learn and support the people around you.